I reached out to over 120 players. Some had been ex-Olympic basketball players, some current pros, some retired pros, male, female, some that were playing in collegiate system in the US, and some that were playing national team under 16. They were all performance-based players, but it ranged from U16 right through to retired players. And I asked them, what do you want from a coach? And the response I got was fascinating.
Coaches, I'm excited to welcome Alan Keane to the podcast. Alan is a national team coach with Great Britain Basketball, the co-founder of Movement Sports, and the head of basketball for the Bermuda Blaze Basketball Club. In this episode, we're going to be discussing what players want from their coach, what players believe good coaching is, one essential skill every coach must be good at, and the problem with praise. Now to the show. Enjoy. I want to start and talk about some interesting findings that you had shared recently online from some questionnaires I think you guys had done with some youth players at your basketball club. The first being asking players what they wanted from their coach. I'd love if you just said a little bit about what you asked them, why you asked them it, and what you guys found out when you posed that question to your players.
Yeah, it stemmed off of something I did during COVID. I spent a lot of time, as most people did in that period, doing projects that you don't have the space for throughout the season. And one of the things I did during COVID was I reached out to over 120 players from, some had been ex-Olympic basketball players. These are all basketball players. Some ex-Olympians, some current pros, some retired pros, male, female, some that were playing in collegiate system in the US, and some that were playing national team under 16. They were all performance-based players, but it ranged from U16 right through to retired players. And I asked them during COVID, what do you want from a coach? And the response I got was fascinating. And maybe at that time would have been, I don't know, what I regret not doing, Luke, is actually doing my own list first and then testing that against what the players were saying. I think there would have been a lot of differences looking back. But, this year I thought to myself, I'm at a club where I've got access to 500 basketball players on a daily basis, from under 10s right through to seniors. But I obviously the under 10s and 12s and 14s, I left them alone and I just focused on the 16 to senior age group. And I just asked them, and generally I went there, and it was literally me walking around over a 2-week period in all these practice sessions, just saying, what do you guys expect from your coach? Or what would you like from your coach? Or what does your coach do well that you want your coach to keep doing that? I got a load of information, but I tried to, themize it. I guess I'm not long finishing a professional doctorate, so I'm still in that space. Like, how can I capture the essence of what I'm learning and what I'm hearing? So I tried to condense it into, 10 or 12 bullet points. And then I wanted to see what was the difference of that between what I did during COVID. And there was a lot of alignment, But what came out of this was stuff. I felt the players were more, not honest, but more raw in their responses. So they talked a lot about, they want coaches who have a knowledge of the game, which was, I guess, basic, but they also said stuff like practice what you preach. I remember one kid saying, and there was other kids who delivered a similar message, but I remember one kid telling me particularly, I want coaches to practice what they preach. And I said, what do you mean by that? Can you tell me some more? And they said, well, sometimes our coaches tell us to be calm, but when during the game we can see that they're angry, or they're very tense, or they shout. They don't look calm, but they tell us to be calm. So I would want a coach to practice what he preached. I mean, I thought it was just an unbelievable response, really, and kind of like, it really froze me in the moment, because I was just thinking, wow, this is an incredibly young person. This person was 16 years old, by the way. And other things was about one-to-one attention, you know, get to know me off the court, get to know who I am, not just as a basketball player, but as a person. A lot of it then was also about, I want to get better as a basketball player. Help me get better as a basketball player, and help my decision making, help my one-on-one skills. But the bit about modeling, practice what you preach. If I could make a list of favorites, that would be number one on the list.
Yeah, it's so good. I don't think I sent it to you or shared it with you at the time, but actually a few weeks ago, inspired by what you shared, I wrote a little newsletter and sent it to my email list on it, just looking at that and even condensing it down further. Like, the themes that I saw that emerged from it was like again, care about us as individuals, like engage with us as this whole person, plan, execute like fun practices that actually help us get better. That was one of the other things you had on that list. It's like they want it to be enjoyable and they want to be able to improve. You already said it, model the behaviors. And then through several of the bullet points too, they want enthusiasm, genuine care and commitment from their coaches. I think about the leaders that I've been led by, right? You can tell when that leader has contagious enthusiasm for what they're doing. And you can also tell when it's like, I don't know that they really love this. I think our
Mm,
players really notice that too. It's like,
mm,
you might not be a perfect coach, but they can tell that you love what you're doing and that you really care. You're committed to it.
mm,
You're enthusiastic about it. And I think that makes it fun too for everyone when the leader of the environment approaches it like that.
Absolutely. What I'd like, I guess, somewhat supporting that information I gathered, follow up was I asked them to define what they think good coaching is, or what's your definition of coaching? I mean, if you get a 25 coaches in a room and ask them that question, you're going to get a variety of answers. Having done that, I'm saying that from experience. But I asked these young players, 15, 16, 17 years old, like, what would you define coaching as? And four things stood out more than anything else. I was given a range of responses, but again, it was quite a big sample size. But again, when I grouped it, the stuff that came out was coaching is building people's confidence. Coaching is helping players to build connections. Coaching is coaching me as the human as well as coaching me, the basketball player. The top four, and the fourth one was coaching is, they defined it as noticing. And when I asked them, say, can you unbox noticing more? Oh, I just think a good coach and good coaching is when I walk in, if a coach notices that I might not be how my energy is low, that a coach will notice that and will adjust accordingly, and coach me according to that, meet me where I'm at, kind of thing. But they defined it as good coaching is listening, hearing, and noticing, and those four things. So building confidence, forming connections, coaching the person as well as the player, listening, noticing, and hearing. Those four things stood above and beyond everything else. And the other things were about influencing lifestyle choices, helping somebody to do something that they can't do alone, those type of things. But those four characteristics, those four descriptions were quite a distance ahead of everything else, which I found quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we should talk about each of those four a little bit more. We'll just take them in order. The first one, building players'
Confidence.
confidence. Yeah. I think that's interesting that was like the highest one.
Yeah.
Again, if you ask coaches, like, what's your role? I think a lot of coaches would recognize that that is a role that we play, but I don't think a lot of us would, myself included, probably put it at the top of the list. I'm
mm.
curious, why do you think players put it there? And then, I mean, you're working with supporting lots of coaches. How can we do that well? What are you seeing coaches doing who are thriving in that area of actually building their players' confidence?
What's really interesting is the range of coaches I'm working with, Luke. At the moment, I'm very lucky. Like this morning, I was working with somebody who's the time zone is very different to the United States. It's complete opposite. And that coach was talking to me about confidence of the pro players that he's coaching and the challenges he's having with some of those players, one in particular, and his confidence, like his level of confidence and self-efficacy. Just before this call with you, I got off a call with a group of coaches who were coaching high school in the States, and confidence came up in that conversation. And the point I'm trying to make here is it doesn't matter the age and stage. From my experience of the coaches I'm working with, it doesn't matter the age, the stage, the level of experience, professional or volunteer player. Confidence is a huge factor. It's a weekly factor. It's a daily factor. It's a minute by minute factor in a game, in a training practice session. The best coaches I've seen breathe life into players. The best coaches I've observed in action make players feel a level of self-efficacy that player maybe can't do by themselves. One way I've noticed it is through affirmations. not praise. And, there's a lot of research out there now talking about the power of affirmation over praise and how it carries more value to the receiver and it's received more authentically and it's less superficial. So I'll give you an example just for the listeners. If you were to come out of the game with 10 rebounds, I could, at the end of a quarter, I could say, great job on the boards, Luke. Great job on the boards. Keep going. I'm praising the action of rebounding. An affirmation in that context would sound like, Luke, I absolutely love your desire, your commitment, and your bravery to pursue the offensive rebound almost every possession. You're relentless with that. You're dominant with that. And you're just so consistent. I love that about you. The affirmation will make a person feel a lot better. And even if you're not, so we'll go back to lack of confidence. If you're not, let's say you're missing shots, because that's where players lose a lot of confidence. Let's say you go 0 for 5 in the first period. An affirmation could be that keeps your confidence high or rebuilds your confidence. Luke, I love the fact that you're willing to take every open shot that comes your way. That's what makes you special. It doesn't matter how many you've missed. If you're open, you'll take the next one and you commit to that shot. I love your commitment to each shot you take. You shoot it with purpose. You shoot it with poise. You shoot it with consistency. I love that. Keep going. You've just gone 0 for 5. I've bred life back into you to go take 5 more in the second period. Because we believe in you in that skill set. That's an example of coaches I've seen in action who are great with affirmations, and it's very different to praise. It carries so much more weight. Even Rolnick, who I have to give an acknowledgement to and tip my hat to. For the listeners, just look up Stephen Rolnick, motivational interviewing. Stephen introduced me to the power of affirmations back in 2018. And I've rehearsed, practiced. I tried to embed specific affirmations in my language. And I have found them firsthand to be super powerful.
Coaches, I wanted to take a quick 60-second time out to tell you about 3 things. Number 1, if you want a free PDF of detailed notes on this episode or any episode of the podcast, subscribe to the Better Coaching newsletter for free today. Number 2, I want to invite you to join the Better Coaching community. It's a free online community of over 500 like-minded coaches from across sports. It's a place to interact with and learn from other coaches. We also have tons of free resources in the classroom section on leadership, culture, practice design, and more. Number 3, this podcast is fueled by RYG Athletics. RYG Athletics is a proud provider of Nike sports camps. We're always looking to add awesome coaches to our network of camp directors. If you're interested in learning more about this paid opportunity and becoming one of our Nike sports camp directors, we'd love to hear from you. You can find links to more information on all 3 things in the show details. Now back to the show. The affirmations that you just shared, they're so much more focused on the process that goes into it and the character and traits of the individual, as opposed to the praise where it's just attached to the outcome of what happened. Hey, shout out, you got 10 rebounds. That's great. But the affirmation was all about what led to the success of that outcome. And I think that there's so much good there that any coach can take. Hey, when we're giving feedback, reinforcement, affirmations, can we deliver it in a way that reinforces who they are and what they're committing to, instead of just the outcome that we noticed or that others notice? And I love it's like breathing life into them. I'll say one more thing, and then I know you have another thought. Like a shooter slump in basketball, so common. Man, I would have kids who are in a shooting slump, and you can see it instantly. It's on their body, it's on their face. The ball's not going in. And I think your affirmations are really powerful. One of the ways I would breathe life into them is I would just look and say, if you do not keep shooting that, I will take you out of the game for not shooting it. Our team needs you to shoot that shot. I know that you can hit that shot. They believe in you to hit that shot. Like, you're hurting our team if you don't shoot it. Okay. So listen, I'm not going to take you out for missing it, but if you stop shooting it, I will, because I feel like that's good for our team. Yeah. I just think that's such a different way to approach an athlete that needs confidence than typically I think is done.
Yeah, I think also normalizing things is really powerful. If a player is lacking confidence, just acknowledging that, look, I can see you're lacking confidence today. And that's okay. That's normal. And you can expect to respond. And look, it's okay that you respond with, you step back or you turn down that shot. It's okay that you're doing that. But, I believe in you and I want you to take care of the next play. Like, I want you to take the next shot, but I want you to understand that you lacking confidence right now, that's normal and that's okay. So there's a great model. Again, I'll go back to models because it just allows me to capture and hold on to stuff. It's called the NEAT model, NEAT. And I'm hoping not to remember each letter of that acronym, but N stands for normalize. So if players disconnected from each other, a player is lacking confidence, a player has an emotional outburst, just explaining to that player or the group of players, it's normal. What's happening to you, what's happening right now is normal. Like, we're not going to shout, I'm not going to shout over it. Like, stop shouting at each other. It's normal we're disconnecting. It's normal that you feel like you've lost confidence. And then the E is about expect to respond with emotion. Like, it's okay to have an emotional response. Expect that. The A escapes me at the moment, but it'll come back to me. And then the T is take care of the next play. Now let's move on. Let's make an action plan or a plan of action in order to make sure the next shot you take is taken with confidence, to make sure the next time we step out onto the court, we're not disconnected, we're together. So NEAT it's a model from the gentleman who wrote the chimp paradox. That'll come back to me too. I'm clearly tired after the
Yeah,
Christmas
you're
break.
good.
I've
Yeah,
got his book
that's
here in
true.
front of me. Stephen Peters, Professor Stephen Peters. So the NEAT model is a good one for coaches too that can help normalize these things. They're part
Yeah,
of the performance.
I think that's good. I really resonate because I don't know that I've always done a great job of it too. Is normalize it. Hey, this is normal, and then to validate the emotional response too. I think it's easy for us to try to want players to turn off the emotion
Mm,
because it can derail them or it can derail our team when it's not channeled into a positive action.
mm,
So I think that's just worth highlighting. Like, hey, we've also got to be comfortable with the reality. And as coaches, it happens to us too. Like, I mean, there's a lot of emotion that takes place when we're coaching. When we can do that for ourselves and help our players do that, I think it really moves them towards that place where it's like, okay, now like this is normal, but what do we do next? And how do we move
yeah.
on
And
together?
what you've done to this point as a coach, will it stand the test of these moments? Like I tell coaches all the time, look, that thing you're hoping that won't happen will happen over the course of a season, and it's not a problem. The question is the system you've built, not talking about tech tac, I'm talking about the environmental system, uh, the depth of relationships that you have facilitated the players to nurture with each other and the coaching staff, the culture you've built. I know it's a very catchphrase term, and we can get into, I got to thank Simon Turner or John Amici for a lovely definition around culture that has meaning for me. But the question I ask coaches, will your culture, system, everything you've done to develop interdependency and connection, will it stand the test of these moments? And you need these moments to effectively assess where you're at and how much a good a job you've done and where the holes are that you've got to fill in and where the gray spaces are that you've got to make clearer for the players. So these are really good moments. And as a coach, look, I love those moments. Like, I move towards them. When players disconnect, I see it as an opportunity for me to, you know, get a good rep here at my coaching in terms of reconnecting players. And, when a player's there's a gray area and they're not clear on their role and they demonstrate that with emotion, that's an opportunity for me to practice another way of coaching that I get another rep at. I really like it. But now I'm not in a place where my job's on the line if we lose 5 games in a row. So I've got to be very context specific here. It's a safe space. But that's coaching. That's coaching. The tech tac, the X's and O's, we can all do it. It's too easy. But the interaction, personnel interaction, player to coach to player, coach to coach, those moments, how do you rebuild confidence? How do you breathe life into a player? How do you repair disconnected relationships within the environment? How do you coach in a way that enhances their decision making? How do you coach in a way that they are solving problems together in action under pressure when the game is live? That's coaching. That's real coaching.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. And I think we started to talk about it a little bit there, even with the neat model and what you were just describing there. That second thing on the list, as far as what is coaching, like helping people build connections, is what athletes perceive coaching to be. Will you talk more about that? And actually, I'll give you credit before I let you talk about it. Your usual walks that you do with your teams, I have shared that with other coaches. I've used that with teams. For coaches that maybe haven't heard that before, just like at the end of practice, taking 3 to 5 minutes or a couple minutes as a cool down and posing some questions, letting your athletes walk up and down the court together, talking with teammates or talking with coaches about different questions, building connections. So good. So shout out to you for that strategy. I'd love to hear that. Anything else as far as what are you seeing coaches do well around helping players build connections?
Well, first of all, I got to redirect that shout out, and that credit has to go to a gentleman and my colleague and the co-owner of Movement Sports, Simon Turner. He introduced me to the usual walk a few years back, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And you're right, it's the most powerful, simple form of building connections you could ever do. And just to elaborate a little bit more on that, my only role with the usual walk is one, to walk with them. So I choose somebody to walk with, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. Number two is that we can talk about anything that's non-basketball related. So sometimes I'll set the topic. I'll go, okay, it's International Women's Day tomorrow, guys. I want you to speak about the most influential woman that's been in your life and why. And you only share it with one other person, so it's a safe space. Now, I'll target players in those sessions, in those moments. So if I've had a disconnect with you in the practice and you're standing across the way, I'll say, okay, tonight's usual walk topic is, and I'll say, right, ready, go get everyone partner up and go, and I'll go grab you straight away. And that's done more to repair relationships than actually having a conversation about what the disconnect was about. We don't even talk about the disconnect. We talk about the topic, the most inspirational woman. And that's a real life example I've had with players of that was the topic. And we didn't even have to talk about why we disconnected in that practice and why he would got frustrated with me and I demonstrated frustration with him. It was repaired just with that usual walk and that topic. It was really incredible. But you go back to connection. How do you build connection with players? Well, the first thing you do in the most simplistic form is you get out of their way. So when your day-to-day practice sessions, the question emerges, how do you coach them in a way that they are having to engage with each other and they're having to problem solve independently as well as interdependently? They can't do that if I'm constantly giving the answer. So I've got to resist the writing reflex. And it's very difficult for coaches because we're hired and put in positions because of our knowledge of the sport and of our knowledge of how to win and our knowledge of how to build teams and our knowledge of how to take players on a journey that they can't take themselves, like those young people said in that little survey I did. But that, an overplaying on that becomes a weakness for the players. So if we're going to have players who are connected, who are able to communicate and accept communication from each other live in action when the game is going, then we've got to be very mindful about how we tee up the environment, how we coach the practice session, how we coach the game. And if we're constantly deficit detecting, looking for what's wrong, and then verbalizing the problem, we're deficit detectors, we've got to resist that writing reflex. We've got to hold back and give them space, first of all, to see if they can solve it together or not. Probe them to solve it. Okay, you haven't called a timeout. Players, timeout. I want you to discuss what you need to fix, what's going well, what needs to be better. You've got 30 seconds. It's only two things you can discuss. Go. And I'm just listening. Could be one way of doing it. There's many other ways, Luke, but I think it starts with your training environment, your practice environment. What do you do daily that allows them to form connections?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good example. Just forcing them to discuss before you interject and highlight all that we have noticed is going wrong. I'll also just say, like, some small things that I've done with teams is a say hi, say bye rule. And I can't even remember who I stole that from. But just, hey, the expectation is when you come into the gym, you've got to come say hi to all the coaches. And before you leave, you got to say bye to all the coaches.
Mm,
Or like, man, we end practice with a huddle and it's like, hey, you got to give every teammate a high five before you leave this gym, right? It's like
yeah.
small things like that can actually just go such a long ways in creating these connections on your team. Yeah, and I
Mm,
think even just being intentional too in how you group people as a coach, who are you going to connect with? Peer to peer, who are you having connect with? Like so many ways. I think it just takes quite a bit of it just takes intentionality and thought. Hey, who
absolutely.
do I need to connect with? Who do I want to get connected to each other and give them some space to do it?
I think it's very helpful. Like a lot of the stuff, again, I'll always pay it forward. Mark Bennett was very good with me, Luke, in term, this is a lot, this is like back in 2012, 2013 onwards. He was very good with me as a mentor at the time and still is to this day, helping me to systemize ways of getting players to connect and to be engaged with each other intentionally for the benefit of their performance, of the team's performance. So, Mark's got his ways he shared with me, and I'll share another way that Simon and I have found in the nursing industry. It's reflective practice is what we're talking about. Can we coach and teach our players to be better at reflection? Because those reflections can stimulate intentional, purposeful conversations with their teammates. So and again, it goes back to the intentionality factor, like you said. So one example could be, which came from nursing. And, for anyone who doesn't know, reflective practice, a lot of research about reflection and reflective practice emerged from the nursing industry in the medical world. They've systemized how they do it. And one way they do it is they have a framework called what, so what, now what? What happened? What was the experience we just had? What did we learn from that experience, i.e., so what, or what meaning does it carry? And the now what effectively means what's the actions going forward based on the learning we just had? What will we change? So, for Simon and I, we've taken what, so what, now what, and we've just termed it what were the wins, not the losses, because the learning is the wins. What were the wins? What actually happened? What did we learn and what will we change? And you could sum it up as, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Is there a better way to do it? And that's a framework I'd often give to coaches. But going back to the what, so what, now what, that's something you could teach your players. So when they are having these mini huddles, they've got a framework they can use that enhances their ability to connect with each other based on what they're trying to achieve in that practice session, in that game. And I think we've got to be very careful here because the world of coaching at the moment, particularly shared through social media, has portrayed the benefits of athlete-centered coaching, ecological dynamics, resisting a coach-led approach. My encouragement would be whatever you're advocating as a coach, so I advocate the athlete-centered way often, then I need to pay respect and I need to be knowledgeable about what the opposite side of that coin says and is. Because if I'm going to anchor myself to a way of coaching and I believe in using reflective practice or educating players on how to be reflective practitioners without using that terminology with them, then I need to know what the opposite is because it will strengthen my position as an athlete centered advocate of coaching. But it would be unfair for me to take that position if I didn't know what the other side of that coin was about as well. And again, it goes back to, right, we want to build connections. We want players to communicate more effectively. We want them to communicate more often. We want them to be better decision makers. We will coach certain ways to achieve those objectives, but there will be a moment and there is times when they need you to actually tell them and not ask them a question. And don't resist the writing reflex. Go in there and solve the problem for them. So it's understanding where you need to be on that sliding scale, as I call it, from I'm athlete centered and everything it has and all it offers here to I'm coach led down here. And again, why am I choosing to be in that space versus this space? That for me defines not the master coach, but a coach who's been intentional about how they're coaching and how they're trying to build connections with players or with players to players.
Yeah, that's really good. The third of four on the list of what is coaching from players, coaching the person as well as the player. I think we've been talking about that some throughout these first two topics. Is there anything you'd want to add to that as far as what
Yeah.
our athletes are looking for?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think we've only scratched, like you do in any podcast, really, Luke. You scratch the surface on topics and hopefully provoke listeners to dig a bit deeper. It's like reading the introduction to a paper or a good book. You hope they carry on. So I think we've got to be careful of assumptions as coaches. When 12 to 15 to 16 to 24 players walk through that door on day one of your season or day 21 or day 51, we have to be very careful of the assumptions that we hold as coaches because we might just assume because they've turned up for a team that plays in a competitive league, we might make an assumption that they're all here to win and they're all here to get better and be pro basketball players. And you've got to be very careful of whose motivation is that. Is that the motivation of the coach? Or is that truly, and where's your evidence would be my next question, is that the motivation of those 16 players? It might be the motivation of 4 to 6 to 7 or however many. There may be 2 players on that team that turn up to your 4 practices a week, but they're doing 4 other practices in another domain. They're playing a musical instrument, they're in drama school, whatever it may be, and they're equal. They're it's a hobby. That's basketball is a hobby. That's all they want it to be because their friends are there. They enjoy it and they're good at it. So they keep getting that, but they're no interest in going on to be a pro WNBA player, NBA player, whatever. So that's a concept called motivational displacement. If you truly care, and coaches talk a lot about care, like I really care about my players, I really care about the sport, I really care about coaching, and that's great. And I'm sure for the vast majority that is true. But if you truly care about all those things, you will live through the lens of, and you will live the concept of motivational displacement. You are parking your motivations as a coach and you're showing up to serve the needs and motivations of these 16 players in front of you. Now, if you're showing up to serve the needs of those 16 players in front of you, then you need to get to know what are their needs for being when they're here and what are their motivations for being here. The only way you find that out is conversations with these players authentically and not a one-off, intermittently and regularly and consistently. Number 2, speak to their parents or their guardians, get an understanding of how they're experiencing you as a coach, how they're experiencing this environment, how they're experiencing the sport and what we're offering. Get that from the parents. If you really want to go deeper and triangulate this, you could go speak to their teachers in the high schools, assuming it's a high school team. So there's always a way to find out more without it being exhaustive on the coach. A very quick win here could be do an anonymous survey 3 times a year. Everyone does. We've heard this countless times, so I won't stay too long on it. Everyone does the end of year stuff, and now they're starting to do anonymous surveys. Okay, great. So there's a safe space. Can't do anything without information because 5 of those players are not coming back to you next year. Do a survey 4 weeks into the season, anonymous survey about how they're experiencing it. Do it again 2 months into the season, because with that information, you can make adjustments, you can make changes and so on. So I think you just got to figure out ways to find out as much information as you can without it being exhaustive, with it being manageable. And there is manageable ways to do it. But you need to park your motivations as a coach. If you want to coach the new offense that you saw Barcelona run on Twitter, I still call it Twitter, apologies, but on X, if you want to run that offense, you need to go coach a pro team in Barcelona's league, because that under 14 boys team, girls team, 16, 18 boys team, girls team, they don't have the tools yet to be able to run that intricate offense. Motivational displacement is a big factor in terms of meeting their needs and motivation.
Yeah, that's good. There's a couple things I'll just highlight. Yeah, the commitment to have the conversations individually, uh, to get information too. How do I coach these players well if I don't really know them or know what matters to them or what's going on in their life? I got to ask them, ask their parents, guardians, other stakeholders in it. Like on, even on I'm coaching my son's first grade basketball team right now. It's a bunch of 6 and 7 year olds. Before the season started, I sent a Google form out to the parents and just said, "Hey, will you fill out this one question survey for me?" And it just said, "What do I need to know about your son to coach them well?" One of the parents is like, "My son's super anxious." Okay. Like I was going to connect with him right off the bat when he showed up. Another one, my son's never played before, but he plays other sports. He's really excited to try it. Like, and there's a couple other things that were, or my son has ADHD and like this is hard for, it was like, okay, I've got great information now to help me coach them, and like what it communicates to a parent that you care enough to ask that, I think
Absolutely.
is powerful. So and I think the surveys, like it can be simple. It could be, to your earlier point, hey, what's going well? What would you change if you were the coach? Like a couple questions, send it to your players, have them fill it out anonymously, and then you actually have some data to look at and reflect on.
Yeah. And going to level on from that, if that's your starting point, the next part for coaches could be the most difficult part, Luke. And that's finding out information about one of the players you coach that you are weak at, that you don't have a strength. What are you going to do then? Because if you're the type of coach that says, right, this player has a certain type of, let's say, learning need, and you haven't had experience working with players who may be physically constrained, or there's other challenges going on, or they can only show up to one practice a week instead of the four that you're offering, and you have a weakness in one of those spaces, what are you doing then in order to help you give that young person the best possible experience they could have? So I'll give you an example. Throughout the year, a player, touch wood, unfortunately may get injured. We hope not, but unfortunately may get injured. Let's just say that they have an cruciate ligament injury, and you as the coach have never had that injury. If you really care about how you coach and the people you coach as much as we say we do, the next action that that coach would take is, I'm going to find somebody who's had this injury before, and I'm going to ask them to come into the practice session, spend some time with this young person so they can create a relatability factor. And that person who's gone through that experience, who's also a basketball player or has been a basketball player, can speak to them and build their confidence that they're going to be okay. Instead of us as coaches superficially saying it, you can find somebody who has had experience in that. Another example, if you're a professional coach and you have recruited and signed a 6'10", low post traditional power forward who play on the block and is, a jump hook to the middle and up and under, is an old school Kevin McHale type player, let's say. But you don't have a skill set in coaching that position. Well, if you truly care about that player and you're being really clinical with your coaching, you've identified that there's a weakness in your coaching in that space, you will find somebody to come in and help you fill that gap. And so so you're offering the best possible service. So I think it's about also that's where the displacement comes in, the motivational displacement. You'll find ways to enhance that person's experience, but you first of all have to identify, what are my strengths? Luke, everything we're talking about on this call, I guess, sorry to segue it here, but it all goes back to the level of self-awareness. If I don't truly understand who I am as a coach, and truly understanding meaning I know my strengths, I'm aware of my weaknesses, I've got strategies to enhance myself in those areas I'm weak. It may take a year, it may take 3 years. It may take, I can get to a certain level and survive this season with X amount or whatever. But if you start from a place of who am I as a coach with honesty and transparency, and if you triangulate it, again, I got to go back to the triangulation concept. It's just powerful when you triangulate things. I won't get into I don't have the knowledge to get into the science behind it. But if I was to say, I'm going to write down what my strengths are, what I think they are. I'm then going to ask my assistant coaches and staff, physio, S&C, if there's someone in the club who's a senior coach. I'm going to ask those other coaches that know me, can you tell me what you think my strengths are? And then I'm going to ask the players that I coach to write down what they think my strengths are. I've taken 3 levels. Now, there's ways we've done this with players to build a team identity. So I'm kind of scratching the surface here around building team identity. Another conversation for another time. But if you were to take that triple threat approach, you're going to find out pretty well what your strengths are. And from there, you can start to unpick your areas you're not strong in. So if nobody said tactically you're really good, if they just talked about your strengths being this, 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 and tactics were not part of that, and you've gone to all the players, you've gone to coaches that know you, and you've done it yourself, you've identified your weaknesses. Starting from that space, you're off and running. You're off to a winner as a coach. And I don't think we spend enough time in that space, but we spend a lot of time analyzing players and their performance. But spending some time in your space and doing that maybe 2 or 3 times in the season, very rich, very
Yeah,
beneficial.
yeah, that's really good. I know we're about to run up against time. The last of the top four, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I'd love to hear if there's anything else you'd want to add to it. Listening, hearing, and noticing that players
Mm.
think that's really important in coaching. Is there anything you'd add to that?
Noticing is probably, I think, the most powerful, just because not every player has the confidence to tell you what they're really thinking and feeling. So I think developing a skill of noticing and just being intentional about noticing. The club coaches I'm working with in Edinburgh, I always communicate to them, like, what did you notice today before you started your practice? They're type of conversations I'd have in a session, post session. Is there anything you noticed different at pre-practice today than previous weeks? And that would stimulate some conversations around players walking in with different body language to previous day or whatever it may be. So noticing is huge. It's huge. But in order to notice, it's closely linked to scanning. So you're being intentional about where you're looking and why you're looking there and where you're looking at it from. Because as soon as a player sees you, because of the source of power we have, the title head coach, straight away there could be a shift in their body language. So just being intentional, and that doesn't start between the four lines of the court. One of the places I sit, and I think the players, if they ever listen to this, they'll have me figured out by now. I sit in the reception area as the players are coming in. I don't wait till they get on the court. I just want to see what's coming into me today. And noticing is a really powerful one. And then there's an explicit way to do it. It's a bit like pre-practice, just going around having, you see lovely clips of Greg Popovich doing this with players for decades now, where, you just hand around the player, you're just having a moment, you're just chatting away, and then you go, oh, is everything all right? And they say, yeah, yeah, I'm cool. And you go, no, but is everything all right? And that second time you ask them, you sometimes get met with the real answer. Oh, I'm having a bad day. It's just, trouble at home. School's not going great. But, when you ask the first time, was everything all right? Yeah, yeah, everything's cool. Okay, but yeah, so everything's all right? Yeah, yeah, really? And you get a bit more of them. Noticing one and being intentional about that. Two, just start being more explicit. Check in, ask, you know, and repeatedly ask. And then share. Say, look, Luke, I've noticed that when you came in today, you looked a bit down. Just share what you've noticed. They'll respect it. Maybe not the first time. They may tighten up and be resistant to it, but you keep chipping away there. Players realize that you truly do care. But then you can't go and smash that by going on the court and being abusive as a coach. There's a thin line here. It's very difficult. Like I say, it's very difficult to build, a bit like any beautiful building in the world, but you can knock it down in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's real. I'll just say one practical thing that I would do is I would be right there to welcome kids into practice. As they walked into the gym, I'd be giving them a high five or a fist pound and just trying to notice anything. And lots of times a kid would walk in, like, man, head hung, whatever it is. Hey, what's going on? It seems like something's a little off here. And sometimes they'll just, no, I'm good, coach. I'm good. And sometimes like, yeah, failed the test, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Girlfriend broke up with me, you know? Yeah, that's so good. Well, Alan, I know we're running up against time. Before we hop off, why don't you just share with the listeners where they can connect with you, learn more about the work that you're doing or movement, any of the stuff you want to share?
Yeah, I guess movement. We've got best places, our own website, movementsports.com. That's MVT. So 4-letter acronym for movement, short for movement, and it's movementsports.com. I'm spending a bit more time on LinkedIn than I used to. I spend a lot of time on X, but I've seemed to be I'm getting more value from LinkedIn at the moment. So you just find me if you look up Alan Keane on LinkedIn. I'll be there, and my messages are open, and I'm happy to engage and speak with coaches should they want to chop it up. So yeah, and then also, Luke, I just want to say congratulations to you, man. It's your podcast was awesome when you had more time to do it, and now you're going to be back up and running. It's just another one I got to add to my list when I'm cycling and walking the dog in the morning and stuff. So good on you, mate, and congratulations.
Oh, thanks, Alan. I appreciate you and your time and always love learning from you.
Pleasure.
Thanks. Coaches, thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. To learn more or connect with the guests from this episode, check out the links in the show details. And if you want a free PDF of detailed notes on this episode or any episode of the podcast, subscribe to the Better Coaching newsletter today for free. We'd also love to see you in our free Better Coaching online community. It's a great place to learn and connect with like-minded coaches from across sports. And finally, if you're interested in becoming one of our Nike Sports Camp directors, we'd love to talk with you about this paid opportunity. You can head to the show details for links to learn more about all of those things. Thanks for listening to the podcast.